All right, today we're tackling one of the biggest head scratchers in decentralized finance, impermanent loss. I know, it's a concept that trips up almost everyone when they first hear it. But stick with me because by the end of this, it's all going to make perfect sense.
So, it all starts with this situation that just feels backwards. You decide to put your crypto to work in a liquidity pool, trying to earn some of those sweet trading fees. You come back to check on it, and something just doesn't add up.
Get this, one of the coins you put in absolutely moons. The price just skyrockets. You'd think that's fantastic news, right? But then you look at what's in your share of the pool, and somehow you have less of that awesome coin and more of the other one. How on earth does that happen?
Well, no, your wallet isn't broken and it's not some kind of glitch. This is actually a fundamental part of how these automated systems work, and it's got a name: impermanent loss. Basically, it's the difference in value between your assets in the pool and what they would have been worth if you just, left them alone in your wallet.
But here's the twist, and it's a big one. That name, impermanent loss, is super misleading. The word loss makes it sound like you're automatically in the red, but that is not always the case. To really get why, we're going to need to forget about crypto entirely for a few minutes and take a trip to a fruit stall.
Yeah, you heard me right. A simple fruit stall. This little analogy is the absolute key to making this whole complicated idea just click.
So a liquidity pool isn't some complex magical thing. It's way, way simpler. Just picture two big buckets sitting next to each other. One bucket is only for apples. The other one is only for oranges. That's it. That's our whole setup.
Okay, so you want to become a liquidity provider, basically a part owner of this stall. How do you do it? Well, you've got to add some fruit to the buckets. But here's the golden rule, and it's super important. You have to add an equal dollar value of both. So if you put in $10 worth of apples, you have to match it with exactly $10 worth of oranges. Once you do that, you get a little ticket that says you now own a percentage, say 5% of the whole stall.
And this is the part you really have to let sink in. The moment you put that fruit in the buckets, you don't own 10 apples and 5 oranges anymore. You don't. What you own is a share. You own 5% of the business. Whatever happens to the total amount of fruit in those buckets, you own 5% of it.
So, why would you do this? What's the point? Well, this is where you get paid. Every single time a customer walks up and swaps some apples for oranges, or the other way around, they have to pay a tiny fee. And that fee gets dropped right into the buckets, making the whole pie bigger. And since you're an owner, you get your 5% cut of every single one of those fees. That's your profit.
Okay, so the stall is open, you're an owner, things are going great. But now, let's see what happens when the market goes absolutely haywire.
Suddenly, a big news story drops. There's been a terrible harvest, a massive orange shortage. All over the world, the price of oranges instantly doubles. But your little automated fruit stall, it's a bit slow on the uptake. It's still offering oranges at the old cheap price. And guess who notices this immediately? Arbitrage traders. They see a massive discount and they rush your stall, bringing armfuls of cheap apples to trade for your super valuable, underpriced oranges.
And here's what that feeding frenzy does to your inventory. The traders have basically dumped a ton of their less valuable apples into one bucket, and they've siphoned off all the now precious oranges from the other. Your stall did what it was programmed to do. It kept the dollar value in the buckets balanced, but now the stall is heavy on apples and light on oranges.
So when you decide it's time to cash out and take your fruit home, you don't get back what you started with. Nope. You get your 5% share of what the buckets look like right now. And that means you're getting back more apples and way fewer oranges. And that is the puzzling moment we talked about at the very beginning.
So, the big question, did you actually lose money? Let's stop guessing and actually run the numbers. This is where it all comes together. First, let's create a baseline. What would have happened if you did nothing at all? You just held on to your fruit. Well, you started with fruit worth $100. After the price of oranges doubled, your stash would now be worth $150, okay? That's our just hold number.
Now, let's look at what you actually get back when you withdraw from the fruit stall. Your share of the rebalanced buckets ends up being 65 apples and only 35 oranges. At the new market prices, the total value of what you're taking out is $135.
And boom, there it is. The difference between the just hold value of $150 and your actual withdrawal of $135 is $15. That negative $15 is your impermanent loss. You ended up with $15 less than you would have if you just held.
But hold on a second. We're forgetting a huge piece of the puzzle here. Remember all those frantic traders? Every single time they swapped fruit, what did they have to do? They had to pay a fee. All of that chaos and that crazy trading rush actually generated a ton of income for the stall. Let's say your 5% ownership stake earned you a cool $20 in fees. That's $20 of pure profit you would have never seen if you were just holding.
And this is the grand finale. We take your withdrawal value, that $135, and we add the $20 you earned in fees. And what's your final total? $155. Now, compare that to the $150 you would have had from just holding. You actually came out ahead by $5. The fees you earned more than covered your impermanent loss. You won.
So now that you see the mechanics, how can you use this to your advantage? Well, it really just boils down to a few simple rules of thumb.
First, try to pair up fruits that tend to move in price together, like apples and pears, not apples and spaceships. The less the prices diverge, the less your buckets will tilt. Second, pick the busiest stalls. High-volume pools mean more customers, which means more trading fees to offset any potential loss. And finally, be smart about when you get in. You probably don't want to provide liquidity right after one of the fruits has already had a massive price pump because a correction could be coming.
Look, at the end of the day, this is really the best way to think about it. Impermanent loss isn't the system stealing your money. It's just the cost of doing business. It's the price you pay to operate a fully automated 24/7 fruit stall. So the question you should always ask yourself isn't, am I going to have impermanent loss? The answer is probably yes. The real question is, are the fees I'm earning going to be enough to make it all worthwhile?